Thank you so much for joining us today. I really do appreciate you. Once again, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hey, thanks so much for having me. Really looking forward to our chat today and talking about this exciting topic. So I'm Alex Coper. I'm the CEO of MoXi. And MoXi is a finance company or a global homeownership company, really. And our main focus is to help democratize access to global homeownership. And we do that in a couple of ways. First and foremost, and I think the reason you wanted to talk with me today is we provide financing for foreigners, US citizens specifically, who are purchasing, refinancing, or cash out refinancing property in Mexico. And the second is we, through our proprietary processes and technology, we help people make sure that they're actually owning what it is that they're paying for and buying. So we help a lot with property diligence. We work really closely with our real estate agent partners to make sure that transactions close on time or early and safely and securely from a title perspective. And so the MoXi team works really hard at doing that every single day. I know there's probably a lot more questions you have, but that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So, what was it got you into that industry? Did you come from mortgages or anything beforehand? Like, what was it that really draw you to international mortgages, if nothing else?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, I've always had a love for Mexico. In fact, when I was in high school, I did like a study abroad program in San Miguel de Allende. Um, from a career perspective, yes. So I have run like mortgage origination teams in the US. Previously, I worked for Bank of America, Merrill Lynch, Citigroup. So some of big name banks, big global banks. Also, at Citi, kind of before I came over to join the MoXi team about 3.5 years ago or so, I was really focused on how can we make changes to the mortgage product and program as it's always been for the last 100 years. How can we adapt and modify it to solve emerging and new problems? And that's been the focus of my career the last probably decade or so. And I think this is a perfect place to do it, right? There are millions and millions of people across the world that would like to experience cultures outside of their home country of citizenship. And a great way to do that is through property ownership, either for investment purposes or for primary residence or for a second home, right? And I think the big barrier to that, though, is that it's kind of a cash market, or historically it has been. So you have to come up with all cash in order to do that. And so our goal at MoXi is to break down that barrier, right? And make sure that global homeownership is accessible for everybody. And we've started that by specifically focusing on US citizens buying or refinancing property in Mexico.
And that's actually a great question because somebody asked me this today. Is this available to Canadians yet?
Right now, just US citizens and US
Okay.
permanent residents. Yep.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah. So if you pay basically kind of two quick barometers, if you pay taxes in the United States, or you file a tax return, I should say, in the United States, and if you have a credit score from all three bureaus in the United States, you can work with MoXi under our current credit policy.
Okay.
Today, we don't serve Canadian citizens. Unfortunately, we're just not equipped to underwrite Canadian credit.
Yeah.
So it's something we'll look to add in the future.
Yeah, I was just asked literally an hour ago, and they were like, "Do you know any companies that'll finance the Canadian?" And I was like, "No." I was like, "I may get back to you on that one, but I'll find out later on." But walk
Yeah.
me through that process. Like, how does somebody get a property loan for in Mexico? Like, what are
Yeah.
the first
So
steps, and how does it go from there?
from the standpoint of a purchase transaction, so someone looking to buy,
Yeah.
we help at any stage throughout the process. So sometimes people will come to MoXi, they'll visit our website, www.moxi.global, and they will submit an application and get a pre-qualification. before they even meet an agent.
Right.
And before they start shopping. Sometimes people come to us after they're already in contract. Sometimes they'll come to us after they already paid in cash and they want to recoup, right, the cash by doing a refinance. Or they got a loan from the developer, let's say, and they want to refinance it into a US dollar mortgage for fixed for 30 years. So we help in any of those situations. But the best way to get started is just to reach out to us, contact one of our mortgage advisors. We work closely with agents, so agents will sometimes contact us on behalf of their client to get the conversation started. That's also great. And our mortgage advisors will walk clients or prospective clients through kind of step-by-step what's involved in the process. It can be relatively fast and easy, powered by technology that we built. And can kind of run on whatever the timeline is for the transaction, whether that's elongated because it's new construction and it's not done yet, or whether that's really short because you have a closing date coming up and you just found us, 60 days into a 90-day escrow and we got to hurry up and make it happen. Right? Any of those possibilities.
And that actually leads me to my next question is, well, how long does it take to get a mortgage? I mean, from day one to like, let's say I found the perfect apartment and I really want to buy it. How long does it take from the time I contact you until the company receives their money?
Yep, great question. We get it all the time. The simple answer is it really depends. The actual mortgage underwriting process is very fast. So especially if a client is engaged and we ask for them to upload XYZ documents, it's all in our digital portal, and they upload them all at the same time, that part is really fast, couple of days. It's the closing that really depends. So is the property new construction? If so, has the condo regime been recorded? Has the construction been manifested? If the property is a resale, is the seller, does the seller currently hold title in a fideicomiso? If so, we need to cancel or modify the fideicomiso, right? And we do all that for you, but it really is dependent on the property, right? I think in a lot of circumstances. So it could be anywhere from, if it's in a non-restricted zone, like Mexico City or like San Miguel de Allende, for example, you don't need to get a Secretary of Foreign Affairs permit, right? That can be a faster close. If it is in a restricted zone, right, they could be a little longer. So it really depends on the circumstances and situation of the property. The actual credit underwriting part is very fast. And so oftentimes, like MoXi is ready to close before anybody else is in the transaction, right? So we face that on a regular basis where we're kind of saying, okay, we're ready to wire funds. The loan is fully approved. We've approved the title and the deed. And, buyers and sellers are still working through negotiations or whatever. So that's more often the case. Could be as fast as, I think our fastest closing ever was 23 days. Sometimes we have transactions that go on for months and months, especially when the property's not done being built.
Yeah, because that's kind of what I was warned is sometimes they'll take 4 to 6 months to process everything. And I'm sure that's like in a nightmare situation. But that was one of the reasons I wanted to speak with you, kind of just find out like what is it. And that also leads me to like a side question. I noticed earlier you said you had like a proprietary system that checks all the titles and all that stuff like that. Is that when you're kind of implementing that? And then the two-part question is there an additional charge for extra work like they're having to do, or is it all inclusive, included in the structure? How does that work?
Yeah, so let me address your first question first. So the 4 to 6 months is, I think that's very long, generally speaking. Like MoXi closings are generally faster than that. And we have kind of an internal motto of faster than cash. So we're trying to help change the market and make it fast for everyone if they want it to be fast. That's the thing. You have to have a buyer, a seller, and an agent on each side who are engaged and turn in documents and participate in the process actively. We're going to move the transaction quickly. And a lot of that has to do with the way that we operate our business internally in our model, making sure that we move things forward, that nothing ever gets stuck or stopped. And if it does, that we're being very proactive with communicating that there's a delay and how we could rectify it.
Okay.
Yeah, as it relates to your second question, so we kind of do a lot of the processes in-house. We found that it makes for a much more efficient process. So we work with our partners, usually in an offer to purchase or in a contract. The notario will be specified. So we will start working with the notario as soon as the file goes over to our legal team to begin that review. We will start working with the listing agent to get property documents almost immediately when the file begins, so on and so forth, right? So we will coordinate the closing with all parties. If a buyer or borrower wants their own attorney, they're welcome to, have one. We'll also include that person if they're working with an agent. The seller is also part of the process of closing a transaction in Mexico. And so our legal team works with the seller of the property to make sure to get us all sitting around the table, proverbially speaking, and closing on time. So that's all part of our process, and I would say sort of included in our costs, so to speak. And that's all detailed in our fee, costs, and charge disclosure, all of our fees and all the third-party costs and charges, which is a majority of it, which can sometimes be surprising for a foreigner understanding costs of purchasing property in Mexico. It's higher than what a U.S. buyer is probably used to in the U.S.
Right. Yeah. That's why we always round up, because we don't want people to think that it's going to be less. Because if we tell them the sticker shock and then then they find out later it's going to be less, like, oh, okay, that's fine. But when they're expecting a small closing cost like the U.S. Has most of the time, they're like, oh wow. So yeah, good point there.
That's really good point. So one of the things that our team has developed in response to that exact situation, it's generated by our secure system. Periodically throughout the loan process, a new document gets generated and emailed to our customer. It's called Estimated Cash to Close Worksheet. And so as we receive the quote for honorarios from the notario, for example, or as we receive different pieces of information from third parties that are required to close the transaction, we update our system, and then the system automatically generates this estimated cash to close document. So there's never a surprise. Like, client always understands what the how much cash they're going to need to close. And this is obviously in addition to, we factor out the amount of the loan, right? They don't need to bring that. Right. So that's an advantage, I would say, of someone working with us, to the extent they want to be really well informed throughout the process, which I think most people do. But we call it Estimated Cash to Close Worksheet, and that gets generated regularly throughout the process.
Okay, wow, that sounds interesting. Okay, and we may cover this later, but I just thought of a question. So if somebody buys a pre-sale, are they going to want to contact you before the entire process, or like, I know you said earlier they want to get money back and all this other stuff, but like in a perfect situation, would you want them to contact you before they put any money down, or would you prefer after they put the down payment or anything like that?
Yeah, great question. So with new construction, and this is definitely a difference between buying new construction in the US versus buying new construction in Mexico. With new construction in Mexico, you're going to advance a deposit funds. You might have a roof on payment due to the developer at some point. Generally, MoXi won't be able to lend until title can be transferred, because that's how we would attach our lien for the mortgage. So generally 90 to 120 days before the anticipated delivery date is the best time to reach out to us. At that point, we will begin working with our legal team, begin working with the developer's legal team, making sure that we have all of the documents. You can't do a legal closing in Mexico unless the condo regime is recorded if one applies, and unless the construction's manifested, and you can't do an appraisal until there's actually something to appraise, right? Until the kitchen is in and the bathrooms. So again, generally 90 to 120 days before anticipated delivery is great. If a potential buyer wants to like talk to us first, have us do have a look at their credit or their income docs, they can definitely reach out to us anytime. The validity of that approval, though, it won't be good 12, 18 months from now, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so we're happy to work with clients anytime, and we do on both sides of that equation, right? Or somewhere in between, but generally 90 to 120 days.
Okay. And that actually leads kind of to my next question. So what are the requirements for a mortgage as a client? Like, what do I need to show? What are some, I know you mentioned earlier, credit, and then also you said that can be an American citizen, but just go ahead and go through some of those if you don't mind.
Yeah, so the basics, so yes, US citizen or US
Okay.
permanent resident.
Yep.
You have to have a valid credit score from all 3 US bureaus. You have to have filed your taxes in the United States the last couple of years. Those are kind of baseline criteria. Our minimum credit score for lending is 700 FICO, which is fairly generous. We have a minimum loan size of 250,000 US dollars. So generally, we work with clients who are transacting on property with a purchase price above 350,000 US dollars. And that could change in the future, but that's kind of where we've set things. That's where we can make the most impact and help the most people. And clients should have saved at least 35% down plus closing costs, generally speaking. And that's really high level, what it is. But we'll lend on a condo, a single family home, a townhome, anything in a planned unit development. We'll lend on multi-unit properties, up to 4 units. There's lots of different, we'll lend on mixed use, even if part of it is as long as at least 50% of it is residential. And then
what about a hotel?
Not really. No commercial properties. Yeah. And then from a vesting perspective, I think this is another, positive or unique thing. A lot of clients want to hold title in an LLC or in a corporation or in their family trust. That's all permitted. We allow that.
Okay.
And then from an occupancy standpoint, we allow primary residence, second home, and investment property. So all 3 of those are permitted occupancy types. So that's just like really high level qualifications.
Yeah. So I noticed you said earlier had to be at least 300. You do mortgages of 250, right?
Generally.
And so if they put let's say they bought a $350,000 home and they put the 30% down, that would leave the 250,000 left to invest. That's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, but is that kind of your bread and butter? Is that what you're implying, or how does that work?
No, that's kind of our minimum. So we require we require 35% down, just to be clear. So the 350 is kind of a round number. But no, we lend all the way up to 2.5 million US dollars. And an aggregate cap. So we have customers that buy multiple like where we make a loan to one person, but on multiple properties. So we have an aggregate limit of 5 million US dollars. So our minimum is kind of properties valued approximately 350 and higher. But we have no maximum, so to speak. So it really is, we help people from that fall into that spectrum or that continuum on either side or in the middle.
Got it. Okay. And then, so how long are the terms for y'all's mortgages? I think I saw that you guys do up to 30, or is that something I saw incorrectly? Or
yeah, no, you got it. So we will lend, clients can kind of choose the term length, 15, 20, 25, or 30 years. It's always a fixed interest rate for the entire length of the loan. Most of our clients, like we don't the interest rate is not higher if you choose a 30-year term versus if you choose a 15-year term. So most clients choose the highest term. That gives you the most payment flexibility. And our products don't have like a penalty if you pay them off early as of now. And so if you take a 30-year term but want to pay it off in 5, that's fine. No issue there. So but yeah, we go all the way up to 30-year mortgage terms.
And that actually leads to my next question. What are the rates for your mortgages here in Mexico?
Yeah, great question. One we get all the time. So I will say, so important for everyone to understand, like our loans are made in US dollars. And I think that's a key difference. So if you are earning your income, like if you're a US citizen and you earn your income in US dollars, but you're repaying in a foreign currency like Mexican pesos, you're subject to foreign exchange risk, but not with MoXi. So we lend in US dollars, fixed interest rate for the whole term up to 30 years. The rates change based on a couple of different factors. So it's FICO score, LTV, and loan size. Those are the 3 primary factors that impact the rate, but also the market impacts the rate. So our rates are going to be like a little bit higher than a 30-year fixed mortgage rate in the United States on an owner-occupied house. But they're going to shift based on that. So, if we were having this conversation like 2 years ago, I would tell you we would have rates in the 6s, right? Now, like we're kind of in the 7s to 9s. But I wouldn't want anyone to make a buying decision based on that, because literally just in the time we're talking, things could have shifted significantly in the market, right? So it really depends on where the market is at. We will finalize a borrower's interest rate, the fixed rate for the full 30 years. It gets kind of finalized about 48, 96 hours before closing. So we issue a customer based on the loan to value, FICO score, and loan size. We issue a margin that's good. You add the margin to the index, and clients can track their rate throughout the entire escrow period. And then it gets finalized kind of right at the end.
So what happens, I know it's based off the US dollar. What happens if somebody buys a property, let's say it's $500,000, but then, and I can't do any math in my head right now because I'm talking, but let's say the dollar goes back up to 20, and then now the loan amount is smaller than or greater than the value of the house. What happens in that scenario?
So
I know it's kind of a convoluted, like mathematical question, but hypothetically, what would happen in that situation?
Yeah, so we're going to calculate loan to value based on a US dollar equivalent of the appraisal. So the appraisal is going to be made in Mexican pesos. That's the law. And then on the day that the appraisal was done, we take the official exchange rate of that day and we calculate. So, and then with 35% down, right? Like, like it's very unlikely that you would end up with, it wouldn't be based on foreign exchange fluctuation, but it's very unlikely you'd end up like upside down.
Especially, and like you said, what's the timeline one more time of funding between the process?
It really depends. It depends on the property, right? So it could be as fast as a month. It could be longer than that if it's new construction, the house isn't done, right? There's all kinds of, potential changes that could elongate the process or shorten it, right? A lot of times we'll have a loan or a transaction in our pipeline and it's scheduled for, October 15th, let's say, just for example.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, all party, like everything's ready to go and everybody's like, well, we may as well just close now. And we're like, okay, cool, let's do it, right? So, and it can happen on September 25th, right? So it really, but generally speaking, like the process timeline really depends on the collateral, right? As well as, and secondarily, like as well as how engaged everybody is in sending in documentation and responding to requests.
Yeah, and the reason I was asking is because I here in the Riviera Maya, I mean, like you said, 2 years ago, the dollar was 20, and so they were selling pre-sale at a certain dollar amount, and then come to find out that dollar is now worth less than it was when they sold it. So obviously with you guys, it's a little bit different because you're just playing based off of what it is that day. So that was the only reason I thought about that. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Well, so, and the law in Mexico requires that like transfer tax be calculated. Like it's
yeah,
Mexico. So the prevailing currency is the Mexican peso.
yeah,
And we always follow the law as it relates to like a legal closing in the country of Mexico. And I think that's important for our clients, right? So
yeah,
yeah, if a developer does a pre-sale in US dollars, then uh and then the currency fluctuates by the time between the
yeah,
sale agreed upon price and then the developer's out, right?
yeah,
Of that, and they're still contractually obligated to sell the unit for that amount.
yep,
And if the opposite occurs, right?
exactly.
Um, so I think, but I think we're starting to see, even in kind of touristy or foreign buyer markets, we're starting to see more properties advertised. I think the law actually requires that they
Yeah,
advertise in Mexican pesos as well as US dollars.
right, both.
So we'll start to see some shifts there.
Yeah, and that's why I was asking because I mean, I'm starting to see it now, but I'll still see ads that'll say X amount of dollars, and I'm just like, oh, like, anyways. So tell me a little bit about what is the process of working with you guys. Like, if I wanted to, I mentioned this earlier, if I was ready to go, how do I apply? Is it better to you talked about talking to your people in that situation? Like, how would I ensure that the process flows smoothly?
Yeah. So I think a great start for anybody that's curious and wants to learn more is to visit our website. We have a lot of videos, frequently asked questions, blog posts where we cover different topics.
Yeah,
We also have a pretty active YouTube channel where we dive into various different frequently asked questions.
yeah,
And our social channels as well have a lot of information there. But when someone is ready to get a little bit more serious, right? Like right from our website, you can schedule a call with a mortgage advisor or submit just like a basic form that says, hey, I want to talk to somebody. There is also a kind of a cool tool on our website that we've built called MoXi Match. So you can, we have a couple of cool tools, but one of them is MoXi Match. So you can kind of type in some basic information about what you're hoping to do, as well as
yeah,
your contact information, and it'll spit out a sort of result, whether or not we think, your transaction is a match for MoXi right now or not. And then we'll be in touch to follow up to schedule a call. The other interesting tool that's available on our website is, and so far as we know, we're the first people to ever do anything like this, but it's a Mexico home ownership calculator. So you can estimate not only the amount of cash you would need to close a transaction, like you're looking at a $500,000 house and you want to borrow $300,000 from MoXi, what will you need to come to the table with to actually close that transaction? It's just an example purpose only, but
yeah,
it'll also tell you for that $300,000 loan, what is the monthly payment you should expect? Both principal and interest, right? Fully fixed interest rate, amortized for 30 years, but also, what does a fideicomiso renewal cost you on a monthly basis? MoXi will handle it, the payment of it on an annual basis, but what does that look like? What does your hazard insurance look like? So we're taking into consideration all of those Mexico specific items and kind of making it into an easy to use calculator tool. So those are both available on our website, both MoXi Match as well as the calculator. And I would just suggest people play with that if they want, read some of our FAQs, watch some of our YouTube
yeah,
videos, or forget all of that and just submit a contact us form. A member of our team will reach out right away, answer some basic questions, schedule a call with a mortgage advisor. And a mortgage advisor will do what's called a discovery call, talk a little bit about MoXi, ask some basic questions, answer some questions, provide some information. Clients who are very much into self-serving and don't want to have a chat with anyone, they're welcome to read all the information they want to on our
Yeah.
website, and then they can submit their application digitally right from there. And a member of the team will get back, confirm the receipt of it, send a doc request out, which means, okay, we received your application. Now you need to upload these underwriting documents. Let us know where you're at in the process.
Cool. Yeah, and I do have to commend you there. When I first learned about you guys, I don't know if I told you, I sold insurance for 14 years, so I like geeked out. Like I was like playing with all the numbers, and then I signed up for your email. Then the first email had like 15 links on it, and I like went to each one of those. Like if you guys could have tracked my website visits, I probably went to like 50 different pages of y'all's of like all the information you guys have, because it was just, to me, like I said, I'm a math nerd, so I was just like, it was great. So I highly recommend, if anybody's interested, check out their website. You'll find tons of information. So
Yeah.
so just a couple more questions to finish up with. Well, so who is the international mortgage really designed for? I know we've talked about numbers, but like let's say I'm a 35-year-old guy who plans on still working. Is that made for the 35-year-old, the 45-year-old, the 55, or the 65-year-old? Like who is this really designed for? Like who is your ideal customer, let's say?
Yeah, so our mission is to democratize access to global homeownership for the world and its people, and we don't sort of narrow its people down by age or anything like that. So we don't have any age restrictions. We don't require life insurance to get a mortgage from MoXi. And if you're watching this and don't know anything about Mexico real estate, you'll be like, why did that guy bring that up, right? But it's kind of common. Mexican banks require life insurance for mortgages, so we don't require that. We report mortgage interest paid to the IRS, like, because the loan is subserviced. The loan part of it is subserviced in the United States, so we send the interest paid, so it could potentially be tax deductible in the United States, right? So there's a lot of kind of factors there that that make us unique. But back to the question, apologies for detouring there. Back to the question, like we don't have age restrictions. We help a lot of people from various different ages and looking to do various different things. So yes, we're a mortgage company, but I would say we're a homeownership company in the sense that we'll help folks who already own a house and want to make sure they own it in the best way possible. And maybe they didn't know we existed, or maybe we didn't exist when they bought the house, and they want some liquidity out of an asset that they thought was totally going to be illiquid, meaning like cash out refinance. Maybe they bought the property, took developer financing. It has this kind of balloon payment hanging over their head, like kind of hard to enjoy your beautiful beachfront property when you know you're going to have to come up with several $100,000 2 years from now, and you don't know where that's going to come from, right? We'll help with that. That's what we consider a rate and term refinance, paying off another mortgage. Or if you're looking to buy, we will help with the purchase money financing, and as well as the property diligence that we do kind of across the board, answering a lot of questions, helping a process that seems really foreign, making it less foreign in a way, or at least speaking the language that our customers speak, and helping them understand how to avoid some common pitfalls as a foreigner purchasing or transacting on property in a foreign country. But we help a lot of people on that spectrum of that continuum. We don't have a target or ideal age necessarily, and I think we've designed our product and program to be as open and accessible to as many people as we possibly can.
No, and that's actually a great selling point. And the reason I asked that question, because one of your competitors, I can't think of which one, they specifically say that you must be, I can't remember their wording, but basically you're going to be working the next 5 to 10 years, or until you pay off your mortgage. And that's it's written into their website. Basically, it's designed for people that are planning to continue to work. And so that's why I was asking if you guys have some sort of criteria into that to that effect. But it sounds like you don't. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, no, we don't have criteria around that. So we will do standard credit underwriting. It looks and feels a lot like getting a mortgage in the United States.
Yeah.
So a client that recently purchased or refinanced a home in California or Texas or Arizona or New York, and went through the process of getting a mortgage to do either of those things, our process is going to feel a lot like that. We're going to ask for a lot of the same documents. We're going to look at your income, your ability to repay the loan. We're never going to say you must continue working to get a loan from us. In fact, we help lots of people that don't have any active income, right? It's all passive income, investment income, retirement income, pension income, asset depletion, you name it. So, but we're going to underwrite income and assets, make sure you have enough for the down payment and reserves. It's pretty standard. If you've ever gotten a mortgage in the United States before, which probably 99% of our customers have, this is going to look and feel very similar to that process. And we're going to ask for a lot of the same documents.
Got it. And so this is kind of a segue into the next question, but also a part B of the last question. But who is an international mortgage not designed for? And do you have to own a home in the US in order to qualify for an international mortgage?
So you do not have to own a home in the United States to qualify for financing from MoXi. We do have like a section of our credit policy for what we call first-time home buyers, meaning you don't currently own and you have not owned a home for the last 36 months. Like that's fine. We have no issue with that. Yeah, sorry, and you'll have to remind me the first who is it?
The first part was just who is it not designed for? Is there anyone else who you would say, you know what, this probably isn't for you? I mean, obviously you have the minimums, but is there anyone else that maybe looking at this and like, is this for me or is this not for me? That you're just like a blatant like, no, this will not work.
Yeah. So from a citizenship standpoint, MoXi currently lends to U.S. citizens or U.S. permanent residents. If you don't fall into one of those criteria, the credit policy doesn't allow us to make a loan to somebody that's not a U.S. citizen or U.S. permanent resident. If there have been like recent credit events like a bankruptcy or something like that, like recently, we're probably not a fit. If you are purchasing property that's not going to legally transfer to you, like you want to do a soft closing, which is technically not a legal transfer of property in the eyes of Mexican law. If you want to buy commercial property, if you want to vest property in a Mexican entity, which means you're not a U.S. entity, even if you are personally, right? Those would be areas where we just can't help. So we are specifically able to help U.S. citizens, U.S. permanent residents who are purchasing or refinancing property that it will legally transfer to the buyer's name or will be owned in the name of the foreign buyer. So I would say that's like just kind of high level as far as like somebody who maybe we wouldn't be able to help. And then again, to your point, like the minimum purchase price, I think is an important factor. We would love to help in all areas and facets. Today, we have a minimum and maximum loan size, and we rarely make exceptions on those.
Okay, so I guess as long as I can check all the boxes, then they would, basically be a good fit. I guess I was just kind of alluding back to what I was talking about earlier. I know certain companies, like you mentioned earlier, they require you to have life insurance. So if somebody's uninsurable, how are they going to buy a mortgage through that said company? Or if somebody, doesn't have, what was the other one too? If they're not planning on working, like it literally said, plan on working the next 5 to 15 years. I can't remember what it said, but I was like, man, that kind of knocks out a lot of people that are close to retirement, So, and I was even thinking like, man, you could be like a well-off person that just happens to be not in good shape, and and you wouldn't qualify, so
Yeah,
anyway,
no, we
well,
don't have any of those parameters, right? We
right.
help everyone that we can. But yeah, life insurance is not a requirement. We have no age restrictions. And again, our like product and program is really modeled off of US mortgage origination. So not only does it kind of feel like it would if you were buying a refinancing property in the US from an experience standpoint, but also from a product and program standpoint, we modeled our like product program underwriting guidelines after our experience in the US mortgage business. So in the United States, you would never have an age limit or
Yeah,
a life insurance requirement or
right.
something like that.
Yeah.
And so we kind of do the same thing here in MoXi.
Well, it sounds fantastic. Like I said, I've already recommended you all to a couple people. And other than that, do you have anything you want to finish with, or do you have any closing comments, I guess?
Yeah, no, I thank you so much for having me. This has been a lot of fun having a chat. And I
Yeah,
would say for anybody that is interested in learning more, like our website has so many, and you alluded to
yeah,
some of the links that you visited. We spend a lot of time following through on our commitment to transparency. So
yeah,
a lot of information is available if you want it. Some people don't want
yeah,
want to just like talk to somebody and get the deal. That's fine. But if somebody wants, like a lot of that information and is available on our website, as well as like some pretty cool interactive tools that allow you to customize scenarios and situations specifically to you
yeah,
to see if it makes sense for you before you even reach out to us. And I would just suggest folks visit our website or speak with you. You can make an introduction to a member of the
yeah.
MoXi team. But this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
me.
same, same. I had a blast, and even I can't think of her name right now. Your rep that organized this for me. She's very helpful, very friendly, and so I want to commend you on that too. So, but yeah, I'll have all the contact information below on this video. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you guys, they definitely can. But thank you so much for meeting with me today. Okay.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Take good care.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.